Nah, I would be mad. I'm just gonna say that. Close to 2,000 cruisers had their crews ripped away from them, and it's worse than that. It's worse than that. Plus, Carnival says they're not gonna do this. Ain't gonna do it. Yeah, that plus a whole lot more. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Little Loga. I am your host, Tony, here to talk you through everything going on in cruising. It's a cruise show, cruise industry updates, everything that's going on. It's all for your face. This first story is so distressing that it's hard to put into words. Close to 2,000 passengers, 1,850 something passengers, notified that their cruise for Monday, yesterday, had been canceled. And the where it gets worse part is they were only given around 24 hours of notice. So they started getting emails on Sunday, Easter Sunday when customer service is closed. This all went down over in the UK, well, really in Europe. P&O Aurora is in dry dock for refit in a shipyard in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. It was supposed to be all done, and it was supposed to be in Southampton yesterday morning for passengers to get on board, and well, they just didn't finish, which is certainly understandable. Sometimes things don't get finished, but you would think they would know before Sunday that it wasn't going to be finished. Sometimes when we hear 1,800 people get their cruise canceled, who cares? Do we know the 1,800 people? Well, let me personalize it for you. This is Stacy Penhorn and her friend Kim. They took the whole week off this week to go on their luxury cruise vacation, they're going to celebrate their 50th birthdays, and well, canceled. Look, again, it happens. It's part of cruising. But they did ask Tracy what her final thought was on it, and she said, "I'm not going to book with them again." They were getting compensated. They got 100% cruise refund and a 20% future cruise credit, but apparently it wasn't enough to sway Miss Penhorn. How would you fall in this circumstance? Would you want something more than just a 20% future cruise credit? Would you sail with that cruise line again? How would you deal with this? Leave a comment below. Now, I'm certainly guilty of telling you when there are cities that do not want cruisers there. I'm telling you about Key West and Baja Harbor and cities in Alaska and Venice, Italy. I'm telling you that they don't like cruisers. Sometimes they're protesting in Seattle. One thing I don't do a good enough job of is telling you where people are excited about cruising, and that's played out recently in a land down under. In a land down under, at a recent conference in Adelaide in Australia, the Minister of Tourism for South Australia has made a big announcement that they are now partnering with CLIA, CLIAA. CLIA, the Cruise Line International Association, and sometimes there's variants of that for special geographies. So, Cruise Line International Association of Australasia. They took the word Australia and Asia, put it together. Australasia. Maybe that's the way you say it. I don't know. It's an exciting partnership that will be beneficial to South Australia because they're partnered with CLIA. They'll get access to the cruise lines. They'll get access to the vendors of the cruise lines. And they will now get access to 6,000 travel agent travel partners that are working to bring tourism to South Australia and to parts of New Zealand. It's exciting. It's exciting. To me, it's one of those stories that signals, I mean, I always say it like, when some place doesn't want cruises, some other place will. So this is a nice example of that. And of course, I'm cruise industry adjacent. I'm a big fan of cruising and I advocate for the industry. And so, yeah, good stuff. Now, let me pose what I think is an interesting scenario to you. Imagine, if you would, that you had, I don't know, $3 million to purchase your next place of residence. Would you rather take $3 million and buy a house on a piece of land somewhere like on land? Or would you rather take the $3 million and buy a permanent house on a cruise ship, a residency at sea? Residency at sea is not a new concept. We've seen it play out over the last few years, but we've got a new player coming to town, a company called Crescent Sea, a company that was formed by the former chairman of Norwegian Cruise Line Holding, Russell Galbot. And the concept is interesting. They purchased a couple cruise ships from Norwegian Cruise Line Holding, the Regent Seven Seas Navigator, an Oceania cruise ship, and I think they're developing their own cruise ship. They're hoping to end up with 5 cruise ships over the next few years, but the first one to focus on is the Navigator coming from Regent Seven Seas. It will be Crescent Sea's first cruise ship, 210 cabins or residencies at sea. They're going to spend tens of millions of dollars to do a full renovation of this cruise ship. They're going to replace all the furniture, they're going to replace all the bathrooms, and you're going to end up with residencies at sea, including the ability to cook food in your cruise cabin. The suites are going to have a full kitchen. So again, it's wild because in a lot of the conversation they're having about this at Crescent Sea, they're kind of equating it to real estate language, right? So in real estate, it's all about location, location, location. Well, what if you remove the need for location because you can go anywhere? Does that add more value to your residence? That's an interesting idea. And then the other thing, of course, is luxury. This is not inexpensive. This is rich people problems for sure. The least expensive cabin on this cruise ship or residence on this cruise ship is going to be over $750,000. And then you have a yearly reoccurring like food and beverage fee for $40,000. And then of course the high end of this goes into the, I think I saw something like 8 million or something like that. Yeah, like I said, rich people problems, but an interesting thought experiment. If you had $5 million, if you had $1 million, what would you find more value in? The ability for your house to go all over the world, or would you rather like have $1 million piece of property somewhere, or $5 million piece of property somewhere? It's a tough call. I feel like if I had $5 million that I could only spend on where I was going to live, I would probably find a place where I could really get the most bang for that buck. But yeah, I don't know. That's just me. What do you think? Talking about dry docks, Carnival Cruise Line just released some numbers that are super fascinating to me. They've chronicled how much money they've spent to do 42 different dry docks since the restart of cruising. So, back at the end of 2021, all the way through 2025, they've had 42 dry docks. So this could have been the same ship going to dry dock multiple times. They did have 5 conversions that are in this number. So where they took a cruise ship from, say, Costa and they carnivalized it, that kind of thing. But what do you think they spent? The 42 times they put ships into dry dock. You ready? $1.8 billion. Now, I don't know if that's high or if that's low in your mind, but that equals about $42.8 million per trip to the dry dock, which that seems expensive when you break it down like that. Again, there's only like 23 or 24 ships in the Carnival fleet. I think it might be a 24 at this point. So they've spent some money on some cruise ships. The reason I find this fascinating is because if you think about the shutdown, these cruise companies were in bad shape. They didn't take any government money and they were borrowing money right and left. And like where they were borrowing the money from got more challenging. So when the shutdown first occurred, they were able to go to their primary lenders, people that had good interest rates and good terms. And when they blew through all of those people, then they had to go like to the second tier where the terms and the interest rates were not as good. And then by the end of the shutdown, just to stay afloat, they're borrowing money from like payday loan places. That's an exaggeration, but if you've ever been in a situation in your life where you needed $200 and you agreed to pay somebody back $150 of that $200, so you pay back $350 just to get $200, that's a bad loan. That's a bad loan. And a lot of these cruise companies found themselves in bad loans. And what's fortunate is they've been able to restructure a lot of that debt. But think about what's occurred over the last few years, cruising, on the edge of being in a bad place. Not only have they, come back, they've spent money to make the ships that they currently have better for that guest experience. They've also, invested in new cruise ships, the major cruise lines. And of course, it's come at an expense to the consumer a little bit. We're paying a higher price. We're getting less now for our cruising dollars than we did in the past. So it's certainly a balance. We've all kind of felt the pain of the shutdown, certainly. But it is wild to me that the cruise companies have been able to have such a robust, complete business as they've gone forward. I don't know, like we're in that place. It's a weird place as consumers because the demand is so high. So many people are traveling. And I think maybe we're starting to see a slump with the current situation. But, I don't know. I'm not seeing very many cheaper cruises out there. Not like it was when I first started cruising. But interesting story. Did you think it was going to be $1.8 billion? I certainly didn't. But yeah, Carnival refurbing them ships. Okay, staying with Carnival, can we talk about juice? We talked about juices the other day. I completely struggled to remember the major juices of breakfast. The major juices of breakfast. I identified orange and apple. I even pulled out cranberry and pineapple, but I missed the big two, the other big two, the tomato and grapefruit juice. And the reason I got to those is because of some great comments, but also the brand ambassador from Carnival made a message talking about how some people on the internet got the general information wrong, not the type of juices, but the whole juice story wrong. So he gave a juice story clarification while insulting some YouTubers. I don't think I was on that list of getting insulted, but I'm like, why are we insulting people? That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so again, he explained the juice situation, but he didn't explain why they were taking away juices that used to be included. And just to set the stage, back in the past, last year, a few months ago, when cruising began for me, you could go to the main dining room for breakfast and you could ask for a tomato juice, for example, and they would bring you tomato juice and it wouldn't cost you anything extra. And now they've come out and said, look, there's only two juices that you can get included with your breakfast. You can get orange juice and apple juice. So if you're somebody who wants cranberry, tomato, pineapple, grapefruit, we will get that for you for your breakfast in the main dining room, but you will have to pay money for it. And that didn't always used to be the case. There's no explanation why that's not the case anymore, other than we charge for it at other bars. But I really think it's probably tied to the fact that they sell special juices now in the main dining room. They're trying to get you to buy special juices. And so how could that help if you're giving away giving away juice when you're trying to spell juice? But anyways, that is the juice update. If you want anything other than apple and orange in the main dining room, it's going to cost you extra. They still have a free juice up there in the buffet. Of course, they have orange juice for breakfast, but then they also have a guava passion fruit orange juice. You can still get that in the buffet. That's not changed. But if you want to get your juice on in the main dining room and it's anything other than orange and apple, then you're going to have to pay the man. You have to pay the man. How about that? And let's be honest. I think I've squeezed just about everything I could out of that juice story. Thank you. I'm here all week. Thank you so much. But I do have to tell you about something Carnival is absolutely saying no, they will not do. But before that, I need a break. And you need a break, I think. A dance break? Dance break. Get up. Get up. Another dance break in the books. Hopefully you're loose and limber and ready for this story, a story of Carnival saying no, they will not do it. I don't know if this story is all that important or not. I am somebody that's impacted by this, but there has been a rumbling from some concerned customers at Carnival, an outcry, as it were, about the name that is printed on the ship card. And I think most of us are cruisers, but if you've never been on a cruise, you get a ship card that identifies you on the cruise ship. It's also used as the way to pay for stuff and the way to get into your cabin. And it has your legal name on it. Like mine says Anthony Barnett, but nobody really calls me Anthony Barnett, except my mom sometimes. And of course my wife when she's trying to get my attention. But yeah, for the most part, they just call me Tony, but my ship card does not say Tony. And there's some people that want to go by other names, right? There's some people that have a preferred name. Might be some people out there whose name's Persimmon, but they like to be called Joanne. I got all these great nicknames. You could call me Tony 2 times, but it doesn't say that on my ship card. The big pushback is that, look, we've already done all these legal things to get on the cruise ship, showed my passport, all my documentation, got on the manifest, all that stuff. Why does my legal name have to be on the ship card? It seems outrageous. And that's what they're saying, but think it through. Think it through. If you've ever been on a cruise, you're going to go to a foreign port. That's part of cruising. And when you get off the ship to go to a foreign port, they tell you 2 things: to bring your ship card and to bring your photo ID. Now, certainly not every cruise port at security, for the country are going to check your photo ID. Some places they're just going to look at the ship card. And so if they just look at the ship card and you're not showing your photo ID, I don't guess it matters what name is on there. They're just looking to see that you have a ship card. But in those circumstances where you do have a ship card requirement and a photo ID requirement, those names have to match. And so if they start changing the legal name from your ship card where it no longer matches your photo ID, you could have trouble in some countries trying to get back on the cruise ship. And I guess some people could say, well, I don't get off the cruise ship, but they can't change the whole process for the people that don't get off of the cruise ship. But here's the thing I know for sure. Like I said, my name is Anthony. A lot of times when I meet my room steward, they'll say, "Oh, Mr. Anthony, it's so nice to meet you." And most of the time, I just have them keep calling me Anthony because I don't really care. But there have been times where I say, "Hey, you can call me Tony if you like," and from that point forward, they always call me Tony. Or at dinner, they'll ask me what my name is, even though my card says Anthony. I'll say Tony, and they call me Tony all the time. That's the way it works on most cruise ships. I think people are getting too hyped up about not much there. I am sensitive to the fact that we live in a time where people don't want to use the names that they've been given, and they have other names and they would prefer to be called those names. But it's just not going to happen when it comes to a scenario where there's like a legal connection between what's on your ship card and what's on your ID. So Carnival said they ain't going to do that. They ain't going to do it. Do you think they should? Do you think they should? I think we can have a little fun with this. I'm going to leave an interesting question in the comments below. I would love for you to play along if you'd like to. Thank you so much for checking out the show. Make sure you check this recommended video out next. Tony for La Lido Loca. Until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.